If you've been to the grocery stores lately, then you may have thought you were in a third world country with all the running cleaning products and toilet paper of all things. Well, how are you enjoying this taste of socialism? The establishment press and the state and federal governments have all taken a leave of absence from common sense, which has induced panic buying. We'll cover this new reality of Americans ditching liberty for temporary security in this episode of Analysis Behind the News, where we provide the perspective that you can use to help save American liberty and independence. It's a full-time job just keeping up on all the coronavirus updates. Everyone in the media and on social media is suddenly an expert on infectious diseases. And all this information that continues to swirl around us is supposed to be able to help us make better decisions, right? Well, remember that saying, knowledge is power? But what's it done in this scenario? It's done quite the opposite, hasn't it? It's made many of us run to the grocery store and clear off shelves as if we're in some sort of apocalypse. There's something to be said about knowledge and wisdom being two different things, and the fact that we as Americans are not wisely applying this knowledge as wisdom. We're allowing ourselves to be panicked. While international bodies, the media, and governments are precipitating this type of behavior by telling us to be prepared for lengthy stays at home, let us remember the words of Friedrich Hayek. He said, "Emergencies have always been the pretext on which the safeguards of individual liberty have been eroded." No doubt you have already seen examples of this in your area. So far, the most egregious has been the state of California. Did you see where Governor Gavin Newsom wrote an executive order that paves the way for commandeering of private property, including hotels, motels, and medical facilities for quarantining? If you think we're making this up, then just do a Google for Executive Order N2520. In it, the governor states that all residents are to heed any orders and guidance of state and local public health officials to control the spread of COVID-19. And given this tyrannical order, one would think that most Americans would have a problem with that. It's one thing to follow guidelines that we can agree with, especially those based on good hygiene practices, but it's entirely something different when we're told that we are to heed any orders and guidance of state and local public health officials. Where would that slippery slope lead you? To be forcefully vaccinated, medicated, hospitalized, arrested? And unfortunately, these egregious incidences are only spreading. Did you see the governors of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut give a joint press conference where they declared that gyms, movie theaters, and casinos would close at 8 p.m. Monday? They also announced all bars and restaurants will be open for takeout and delivery only. Then, according to the New York Post, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo had the gall to say, "We have agreed to a common set of rules that will pertain in all of our states, so don't even think about going to a neighboring state." So the New York Post also wrote, "It's a new TriState Plan, and all governors agreed that gatherings of more than 50 will be banned. They will then remain closed until further notice," added Cuomo, saying he and the three governors will discuss plans for reopening. The governors will discuss plans for reopening. Really? Have they heard of property rights? A virus doesn't get to waive your rights to life, liberty, and property. There's no loophole and clause in the founding documents that says your rights go away in a medical emergency. But the attack on your rights continues. We next turn our attention to Kentucky, where a man is under house arrest because he would not self-quarantine. Again, the New York Post reports, a Kentucky coronavirus patient has been placed under police guard after refusing to stay under quarantine, the state's governor has revealed. The unidentified 53-year-old man from Nelson County recently tested positive at the University of Louisville, but left against medical advice, but also refused to self-isolate at home, Governor Andy Beshear said at a news conference. A local judge declared a state of emergency in order to invoke a little-known statute that allows him to force a self-isolation or quarantine, the Lexington Herald leader reported. Law enforcement officers are now stationed outside the infected man's home to make sure he does not leave and spread the potentially deadly virus. It's a step I hoped I'd never have to take, but we can't allow one person we know who has the virus to refuse to protect their neighbors, Bashir said at the press conference. Folks, this isn't communist China or Cuba or Venezuela. This is the United States of America. It's home of the brave and the free. But unfortunately, we're being turned into the home of the weak and the timid. The U.S. Constitution protects the God-given right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable seizures and searches. This is not a Hollywood movie. The coronavirus has not set up any type of do-or-die situation. This is not like a cyanide gas cloud, that with one deep breath you're dead. The fact of the matter is that 80% who catch COVID-19 have very mild symptoms, like a cold. Where do these tyrannical politicians think they reside? Now, in a country where true fascism was once realized, Italy seems to be reverting back to those days by declaring a nationwide quarantine. As the New American reported over the weekend, these Italian quarantine rules amount to a precise recipe for instant police state. The article continues. The first question an Italian citizen might have, which the Local, which is a English language Italian news site, has, the question is, can I leave my house? One would think that the answer is yes, and in Italy, the answer is yes, but only if citizens fill out the required paperwork. According to the Local, the government has asked people to stay indoors unless they have an urgent need to go out, such as for work or a medical appointment, or to buy food. Of course, citizens will have to fill out a form when leaving the house declaring your reasons for doing so. Yet, with this type of authoritarian control, Italy is not seeing the spread of the virus decline. They are second only to China regarding total cases. Now, one place that has stemmed its spread of infections is South Korea, which did not take a tyrannical hold on its people. Instead, according to the same New American article, South Korea is leveraging private property rights to thwart the spread of the virus, with building owners posting and enforcing no mask, no entry signs. Just imagine how many Americans would react to being turned away or denied service from a favored destination at the sole discretion of the proprietor. So Earl, who is this gentleman from, it is Peter C. Earl, an economist writing for the American Enterprise Institute, writes, drive-through testing stations have been set up nationwide through which individuals, this is in South Korea now, with which individuals after a 10-minute test are notified within a few hours if infected. A voluntary self-diagnosis phone app was created in the early stages of the pandemic, and living and treatment centers are set up in a soft quarantine spirit. He goes on, or the New American goes on to write, how well has this worked? Well, so far in South Korea, according to Statista, the outbreak began in the nation in mid-February and peaked at the end of the month and the first days of March. Since then, the country has experienced a consistent decrease in new infections. Meanwhile, in the new Italian police state, the opposite has occurred. There, the outbreak started at around the same time but has exploded with no let-up since. Of course, there may be other factors besides respect for freedom and property rights at play in the experience of these two nations, but arguably South Korea should have fared at least as bad as Italy. After all, South Korea is one of the world's most densely populated nations, with a far more concentrated population than Italy. 532 people per square mile in Italy, as opposed to 1,366 people per square mile in South Korea. it seems like the spread of the virus should have been even faster in South Korea based on population density alone. Folks, the coronavirus is being hyped at a level unparalleled in recent history. What are we to think about the virus? Well, let's ask world-renowned virologist Dr. W. Ian Lipkin, who was recently interviewed by India Today. He said that a lot more people are probably infected who don't know that they are. And by the time the actual number of cases is known, the mortality rate should be about 0.1%, about the same as the seasonal flu. He said seasonal influenza infects up to about 1/3 of the world's population every year. He said the coronavirus may follow a similar pattern of recurring every year, much like the flu, and that it could be with us from now on. He said it is spread by respiratory droplets, especially within 6 feet of a person. So, does that constitute a national emergency? Watch what all this hype will do to the economy, because thanks to weak-kneed politicians, we all get to have a chance, we all get to have a front seat to this debacle. Now, we'll have more on this attack on liberty in the coming weeks. And until then, go to thenewamerican.com and read the article we were just quoting from. It's titled, it's titled, Your Papers, Please. Italy Fights Coronavirus with Tyranny. Then share it with everyone you know online, and feel free to print it out and distribute hard copies as well. The American people must not fall for such heavy-handed tactics that threaten to erase your freedom. And keep your eye on this at thenewamerican.com. We'll include links in the video description. And until next time, we'll see you then.